Hi there. Welcome to the last video for Unit 3, Communication and Network. The first question that we're going to answer in this particular video is what are the different categories of network? But before we go into this question, previously I have discussed about two things in the very first video. It's about telecommunication and the components of data communication. In previous video, we discussed about what is a network and what is a computer network, what are the components in a computer network, and so on. And now we are going to discuss about this particular question. What are the different categories of network? Basically, we can divide network into these three different categories. Local area network, also known as LAN, LAN, metropolitan area network, also known as MAN, and also wide area network, also known as WAN. And these categories determined by first is size, how big it is it a small network, a medium-sized network, or a big network. Then the ownership, whether it's a public network or a private network, and also the distance it covers. And finally is the physical architecture. So these are the parameters used by the network designers in order to differentiate between one network to another type of network. Let's look at the first one, which is local area network, LAN. Is defined as a network that connects computers and devices in a limited geographical area. It can be in a single room, it can be a single floor within a building, or within a small building. So the diagram that you see is actually a snapshot of a single floor within a huge building. And that is what we call a local area network. Maybe you experience this, you go to your computer lab at your university or colleges and so on. And within that lab, if it has a computer network, then you can consider that as a local area network. So relatively, we can say LAN is the smallest type of network, cover short distance, limited geographical area. And usually local area network is private, meaning that it's owned by a private entity. It can be a company, organization, and so on. The second type of network is MAN, Metropolitan Area Network, designed to extend over an entire city. If I take an example of where I work and live, the city of Kuching, so MAN can cover the whole city of Kuching. Maybe a single network or connecting a number of smaller local area network into a larger network. So you can see the difference here. It is a larger network compared to LAN, span greater distance, geographical area, and it can be owned by a private company or a public company, such as a local telephone company. And the final type of network is wide area network, WAN. Long distance transmission of data, voice and video, image, large geographical area, span country, continent, or even the whole world. And it's actually a combination of public, leased, or private communication devices. So it's a mixture of all these three. One which is wholly owned by a single company is often referred to as an enterprise network. So a huge network, for example, Google. So they own a huge network all over the world. So that is actually an enterprise network. And finally, let's look at a little bit of term. Communication between networks is called internetworking. And the internet, as we know it today, the one that you use to send your emails, to browse the internet, to search for information, that is what we call the internet. And essentially is the ultimate wide area network, and it spans the entire globe. So the whole world is actually a big wide area network. Connects between different type of smaller network. It connect MAN, it connect multiple LANs and so on. So just an illustration of a wide area network. It covers the whole geographical world. And this is probably a very interesting question. Who owns the internet? Well, nobody does. Nobody does actually own the internet. Not a single person or company owns the internet or even controls it entirely. So in theory, and you can search about it, there's a lot of interesting article. Nobody can actually shut down the internet. Even if you close some of the ISP, internet service provider, there will be network or the internet will still exist. Because what area network? It consists of many smaller networks. So it's not possible to close all these smaller network, and usually there is more than one path between one network to another network. These smaller networks are often owned by and managed by a person or organization, and the internet then is really defined by how connection can be made between this network. So if you remember what area network is a combination of smaller network and it spans the entire globe. So this is very interesting actually. And finally, you probably need to know what are the different types of communication devices. First, we have to define what is a communication device. So basically, you can define a communication device as any type of hardware capable of transmitting data, instruction, and information. Remember the three things: data, instruction, and information between devices. So any hardware capable of doing these three things between devices is actually called a communication device. It functions as a receiver, it functions as a transmitter, and also in some instances, it functions as a converter. So the basic characteristic when you talk about communication device, you usually want to know how fast the device can transfer data, how far you can actually transfer the data, and how much data that you can actually transfer through these devices. So these are the three characteristics of a communication device: fast, far, and how much data. We're going to look at a few, which is common one. The first one is modem. So modem is actually a short form for modulation and demodulation. So what a modem does is actually is a device to convert data from analog to digital, transmit through the communication network, and when it arrives at the other end, it will be converted back from digital to analog. So first you modulate. Modulate is actually the process of changing analog to digital. Then you demodulate from digital to analog. So that's why we call it as a modem. Modulator, demodulator. So why you have to do this actually? Because your voice, when you pick up the phone or when you transmit the data, originally is actually analog. In order for you to transmit data over a network, it has to be in digital format. So there must be a converter, and the device which is used to do this, the conversion, is actually a modem. Another device that probably you have heard and maybe use, Unify, Streamix, and so on, is a router. Sometimes also pronounced as router or a router. So a router is responsible for sending network traffic to its correct destination. So it's like a traffic police that direct the packet of information or data sent from sender to the receiver. Because you have to remember, if we go back to the previous slide, a wide area network consists of multiple small networks, and data has to 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 be transferred or to move from one point to another point, and it has to go through multiple points within a network. So when you arrive at a point and there is more than one path, then you need a router to decide which path is suitable for this data. So a router is actually doing that. A router responsible for sending network traffic to its correct destination. The next device, communication device, is a network interface card. This one, if you have a desktop or a laptop, usually you will have NIC, short form for network interface card or network connector. So in order for a computers in a network to be able to communicate with another computer within the network, the computer must have a network interface card. So that's all for this unit. I hope you have gained a lot of knowledge from this unit, and I wish you all the best in your study. Thank you.